Do you remember your first sight of German soldiers?
Of course I do, very well. I walked down the market square, saw them coming up on these motorcycles and sidecars with a machine gun in front. And so we just stood on the pavement, watching them come in. It was a spectacle, that's all. Obviously it was my age, it was all excitement. And since at the time they weren't beating or shooting anybody, it was not apparent, what's going to happen.
I'm Eric Marcus, and this is Making Gay History, the Nazi Era. Kenneth Roman, originally Roman Katzbach, was born in 1924 in the southeastern Polish town of Gorlice. His mother died when he was a child, and he was sent to live with his maternal grandfather, a religious Jew. Ken's grandfather owned a successful soda factory, and Ken grew up in a large family mansion surrounded by dozens of uncles, aunts, and cousins. He recalled his childhood as prosperous, cultured, and idyllic. Ken was 15 years old when the Germans occupied Gorlice in September 1939. Jews were soon banned from social and economic life. Schools and synagogues were shut. 2 years later, the Nazis confined Gorlice's Jews, including Ken and his family, to a ghetto. Decades later, when Ken was in his 70s and living in London, he shared his story with the USC Shoah Foundation. He told interviewer Shirley Murgraff about the Nazi-commandeered sawmill in Gorlice where he was hired as an electrician. The mill's supervisor was a brutal anti-Semite, but for a time, the job saved Ken from ending up in a labor camp. His luck ran out when the Nazis decided to liquidate the ghetto.
The final action took place on the 14th of August 1942. On the ill-fated day, about 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, the SS and the stormtroopers arrived, and they encircled the ghetto compound, and they started hammering on every single door. Aufmachen, aufmachen, open, open. Those doors which didn't open quick enough were machine gunned. They were driving everybody into the market square. Men, women and children. And then they were systematically searching every house. They were checking the basements, lofts, hidden rooms, panels. My friend Joe Kozenik, where he was, there was a woman, she was having trouble with her infant, and she didn't come out quick enough. So they went into the house and they saw her there, and just because she wasn't outside, so they shot her. And they grabbed the child out of hand and threw it out of the window onto the pavement.
How prepared were you for this action?
None. I wasn't at all. There wasn't like in other things where there was what they call a deportation, where everybody packed their suitcases, and that was... Nobody had an idea. It was secretive, and it was done without any warning. So when we were finally sort of driven out, there were polls kept coming up, to the SS and the Gestapo, saying where Jews were hiding.
What happened when you got to the square?
Well, once we got to the square, we were just standing there, not knowing what's going to happen. Then there was a bit of a tumult, the headman, Kreutzer, arrived in his car demanding from the Gestapo his workers. So they selected 60 of us, including myself and Joe Kozenik.
Approximately how many people do you think were assembled in the square?
Oh, God. There must have been, I don't know, 1,000 or more. So we were picked out. Then they picked out all the old and sick on a separate group. And then all the others were marched to the railway station. The whole thing was so traumatic. There am I, for the first time in my life, left on my own. Nobody to give me food, nobody to look after me, no clothing, nothing. Just, it was beyond comprehension.
Were you able to say goodbye to your
No.
family?
You couldn't wave, you couldn't do anything. You were petrified, you didn't know what's happening. You know, with all the SS with machine guns around you.
Did you see the other people, the women and the children and the other?
No. What happened, the 60 of us, they took us to the sawmill. They created a little camp with 2 or 3 barracks, whatever. And they had SS guards around it so that nobody escaped. But what we heard was that the old and the sick were taken to a disused brickwork. And that was not far away from the sawmill. And there they shot them all. We could hear the shootings.
And what happened to the others who went to the railway station?
Oh. They all dispersed. Plaszow, Auschwitz, Treblinka, God knows. And nobody else knew where they went.
Ken, his friend Joe, and the other workers were imprisoned at the sawmill for a few months before the Nazis transferred them to a series of forced labor camps. In August 1944, they were taken by cattle car from Poland to the Flossenburg concentration camp in Germany near the Czech border. Flossenburg originally housed only German prisoners. When the war brought an influx of foreign political prisoners, the SS granted the German inmates privileged status, even though many of them were criminals. They were given administrative positions and worked as kapos, or Blockälteste, block elders, who oversaw the barracks. They got to keep their hair and wear civilian clothing. Ken had to wear the customary striped uniform and cap and wooden clogs. He had just turned 20.
At the time, I was so small and thin, scraggy, that they put me on the children block. I don't think they asked me my age. So I ended up on barrack number 7. And the Blockälteste was a German called Willy. And he was the most vicious, sadistic person one could ever meet. If there was a prize, he would win it. And the prisoners just were absolutely petrified, including myself. So he was ruling it with a rod of iron. Any minutest misdemeanor, you were given the horse. And that was a wooden frame where the inmate was strapped onto, usually with bare buttocks, and he was administering the lashes. And the inmate had to count it. If you lost count, he started from number 1. And he used all his strength. He was literally foaming from the mouth when he was doing it. Invariably, the punishment used to be 25, but he forgot himself. If he was in the mood, he carried on. Sometimes the prisoner got up half alive, sometimes even dead. It didn't matter. All he had to do, next morning on the Appellplatz, he had to produce so many bodies. As long as the count was right, fine. One day, Willie says to me, "You're not going to work. You're going to be my batman." And that was the rule. Every blockade tester had a batman. And the batman's job was to do all his bidding, whatever he wanted. Clean his pitch. Every blockade tester had a corner of the barrack, a big corner, where he had his own bed, white linen, wardrobe, table, chair, a small guest house. Perfect. You had to look after it, to keep it tidy. Also, he had to wash his shirts, underwear, socks, the lot. So that was my job. And he was very, very often drunk. There were factories where we were dismantling shot-down Messerschmitts for parts. And what they were doing, they were taking out the antifreeze or the alcohol from the aircraft meters. And they were sharing it among the capos. The Czech inmates used to get parcels from Czechoslovakia. And the rule was, each one who got a parcel gave half to the capo. I'm sure they had lots of lovely goodies. I'm sure they could celebrate between them. And they had little parties. And he said to me, "Can I sing?" So I said, "Yes. I used to be in the school choir." He said, "Good." He said, "Do you know Mamachi?" I said, "I do, because we used to sing it at home." So, because it's a German classic lullaby. So he said, "Stay back." So I stayed back, and there was cronies, were sitting round. So then he says to me, "Sing Mamachi." And they had a little concertina there. And so I sang. I was doing the entertainment. Mamachi, schenk me ein Pförtchen bei my Paradies. So, fine, everybody was happy, and then they were getting more morose and more drunk, you see. So when they all went to their respective quarters, he says to me, "Stay." So I stayed. He says to me, "Strip and go into my bed." Saying no, he'll kill me then. Look, he had no choice. So I did. So I was there quite a while. And I was so frightened, I was shivering so much that the bed was shaking. I didn't know what he was going to do to me. See? So, anyway, eventually, he comes into bed, and I'm just lying. He says, "Turn over." So I did. So then, there and then, he raped me. Well, it's impossible to describe the excruciating pain. It was something, I've been hit, I've been beaten, but there was no equivalent. I was screaming. The more I was screaming, the wilder he got. And he was going mad. I expected to be beaten any minute, but somehow he didn't. See? Anyway, eventually spent himself, it was over. So I went back to my bed, in the dormitory. So then he kept me back. On the plus side, apart from not being beaten, he used to give me the odd extra bit of bread, and then he gave me underwear, a vest and socks, because it was an unwritten rule among the blockhelters that their possessions, their little batmen, were vying with each other who is better looked after. I was his property, you see. So, that was the plus. But the plus reflected itself to Joe. I used to give half to Joe. He didn't know anything about it. He only knew I was a batman. They kept it quiet, the couples, although they had a brothel in Flossenburg, where they used to go. That was no good, because first of all it was more or less under supervision, then a short hop and go. Well, there they had a nice youth all night. You see, they could do what they wanted.
After you were raped and when you realised that you would have to go on being abused in this fashion, how did you cope with that, particularly when you were on your own and had time to think?
Well, the only thing I could do is cry on my own. And the reason why I cried, because of the helplessness of the situation, that I was in no position to either refuse or defend myself. See? In fact, any reaction would have been catastrophic. So one had to wear a false smile and look happy, because they wanted happy boys round them, and not miseries. Then one day, out of the blue, Willie says to me, "You're going to Barrack 15. He says, "Go to Barrack 15, you go to Barrack 15. Look, you can't argue. And there the blockheltester was Max. What I didn't realize at the time, that they were trading boys between them, you see, and for tobacco and some other things, you see. So I end up with Max. He was a real paedophile, because I was the smallest there, and he liked to see me stripping, watching me for a long time before he did anything. Stay, turn around, stay, all this. Had games, see, and then touching me and that. But Max, although he was a sadist, much older than Willie, nasty, he punished people when they earned punishment, for something. And he wasn't so wild with the whip, beating it for any excuse. And he was stoutish, sort of fatherly figure, sort of more avuncular. And he treated me well. And he got me extra underwear, fresh towel, and shoes, and, he really took the trouble. And he gave me extra bits. And one of the benefits was I saved Joe's life. There was another couple called Heinrich, and for some reason or other, Joe fell foul of Heinrich. So Heinrich decided Joe has to go to the stone quarry. There, the average time lifespan was 2 days. If the work didn't kill you, because you were undernourished, you had to lug those big granite stones, and the couples used to beat you and kick you. They used to dynamite the big walls for the stone. No warning. Somebody got killed, so what? So they sent him to the stone quarry. So he comes back in the evening. So he says to me, Romek, if I have to go there tomorrow, I'm dead. I didn't know what to do. I was scared of Max, because I thought myself, if I ask him or do something, he'd probably kick me in the bottom and beat me. You see, because, when he was in a foul mood, that was it. So, I couldn't pluck up the courage. So then he went for the next day. So then he came back, half emaciated. And he said, Romek, if I go there tomorrow, I'm dead. You've got to do something. As good luck will have it, in bad luck, they had a party, the couples. My usual performance, sing mamachi and all that, and other German sort of songs. So then, when they all dispersed, I fell to his knees, and I said, do what you like with me. I said, but this is Joe, my friend from my hometown. We went to school together, we were buddies all the years. I said, I'll never forgive myself if I didn't ask you, to save him. He never said a word. The following day, around about 11 o'clock, Joe is back. So obviously, between them, you see. So I saved Joe's life.
The older men in the barracks, presumably they must have had some idea of your role.
Oh, yes. Oh, all jealous. Look, everybody is starving. They've got nothing to eat. And people are dying of starvation. People were dying overnight in bed. The person lying next to him used to break their hands if they clutched a piece of bread in it. And by the same token, kicking them out of bed to make a little bit more room so they could rest a little bit better. People have no idea, what hell it was.
Did they take it out on you because of
No.
your favoured position?
They couldn't. One word or one touch, it was more than their life was worth.
In mid-April 1945, as U.S. troops were approaching Flossenburg, the SS ordered the camp's evacuation. Jewish prisoners were scheduled to leave first, but Max, Ken's block elder, altered Ken's camp records to say he was Catholic. That only bought him a few days. Ken was sent on a death march to Dachau that killed thousands. He was liberated en route by the Americans. Ken landed in a displaced persons camp, where he met an Italian partisan who invited him to come to Italy. Ken had heard rumors that Jews were still unsafe in Poland, so he went. While in Italy, he learned that out of 41 family members, only one uncle had survived the war. Ken enrolled in the cadet school of a Polish army unit that was stationed in southern Italy. When the army camp was closed in 1946, Ken ended up in England. He settled in London and took evening classes in engineering. Over the next 2 decades, Ken worked his way up through a series of jobs, from delicatessen delivery boy to maintenance manager for a chain of laundromats. Girlfriends came and went. By the mid-1960s, Ken was a self-described lousy bachelor. He had just started his own engineering business when a neighbor introduced him to Jimmy Draper.
She says that she knows an Irish boy, a nurse, that he's looking for lodgings. I had a flat in Camden Road, up on top, a small two-room flat. So I said, well, I'm not so sure. But anyway, she said, speak to him. Okay. So I said to him that I'll prepare an evening meal. And so I did. I did some lovely roast beef and with roast potatoes and a soup or something, and I had a glass of wine and then cherry brandy, things like that. Anyway, so we sat and chat. He said what he was doing, and I didn't tell him my whole story then or anything. I just said, at the moment, I've only just started my business. I wouldn't mind sharing with somebody to help, because I had to pay rates, electricity, and it's rather expensive. He said, fine, we agreed. And we started getting on. He wasn't easy, because he had a sheltered life, in Ireland and all that. So, but we got on very well. And then as my business started getting better and better, our standard of living, I started going to Stamford Hill, buying salmon, and the better bits, the better cuts, the better wines. We used to invite friends for dinner. It became much more social. All the members of all his family, sisters, the mother came to us, the lot. As far as they was concerned, I was one of them. And Jimmy kept on getting a better job, so we both had money. We started going on holiday to lots of places. His parents came, stayed with us. We used to go to Ireland. Life was good.
Have you ever returned to your hometown?
No, and I've no intention. It's a graveyard.
Have you been back to Poland at all?
No. I keep on thinking of going to just have a quick look at the town and probably visit Auschwitz or things like that. But I was hoping to go to Flossenburg, but they told me there's nothing there. It's all been built up, lovely luxury villas. And they just got a little corner, a garden of remembrance, which is a joke.
How do you think you've been affected in your life by your experiences during the war?
In a way, I would say broken. I mean, first of all, I have no family of my own. I never got married. That may have something to do with the past. By the same token, it's still something that hounds you. Bring up a family. Are they going to be victims like you were? And this makes it very, very difficult to reconcile. And then you talk about normality, all this superficial, bon ami, well-being, the luxuries one affords oneself and all that. But inwardly, it is there. And it's very evident in the dreams, which are absolutely awful. To this very day, it's never left me. At first, there was usually shooting and hounding, but now they become sort of more clouded, more impossible to explain. Just a very, very quick example. I mean, you go to see a place, and you know where it is, and a few moments later, the place is there, but the door isn't there. You don't know which way to get out. And then you go along the road, and all of a sudden there's an enormous steep hill up, and you can't possibly climb it. You can't. and you sweat. I could feel sweating. So then you double back and there's no road. It was there, but it isn't anymore. It's all these unattainable things. And very often I'm being threatened, which when I scream, I mean, fortunately our 2 bedrooms are not too far apart, so Jimmy has to come in, you see, to calm me down. So that, I would say, is the legacy of all the suffering.
Ken, will you introduce us to who's sitting next to you, please?
In the final segment of the videotaped interview, Ken and Jimmy sit side by side in 2 armchairs in their tastefully appointed London home. Ken, who is small and bald, wears a short-sleeved pale blue shirt and tie. Jimmy has neatly combed white hair. He wears a burgundy V-neck sweater over a dark blue shirt. Ken smiles broadly as he introduces Jimmy, whose eyes widen every so often as Ken sings his praises.
Sitting next to me is my very dear and loyal friend, Jimmy Draper. We have been together for 32 years, and quite frankly, I don't know what I would do without him, because he looks after me, he makes me feel comfortable, he cares for me, and he also carries quite a lot of my burdens as well. He is a wonderful, wonderful person.
Jimmy, what would you like to say?
Well, that is a hard one to follow, but what I would like to say is that it's quite true. I've known Ken for all those years, and when I first knew him, I knew little of the Holocaust or of the survivors. And indeed, when Ken started telling me about it, I was rather horrified and felt really sad sometimes. I suppose purely because I was in nursing and it was a caring profession, and I was coming home having administered tender and loving care, hopefully. And I felt sad that Ken should be remembering this kind of event in his life. And I did say to him, I think it would be a good idea if you now try to forget about it and look to the future. He said very pertinently, "Oh no, Jimmy, I must never forget." So I didn't say anything more. Then eventually we went to the 45 Aid Society annual reunion dinner, and that was my first encounter with a group of people of the same kit and kin as Ken, and it certainly came home to me that indeed it is a fact you must never forget. I'm not alone now in saying this to Ken, because my family, indeed my father and mother too, were very proud of Ken, and I always try to support Ken in the work that he does towards the cause of never forgetting. And I hope that for many years he will continue to do so, and for that I wish him a long life.
At the end of USC Shoah Foundation interviews, it's common for the families of Jewish Holocaust survivors to join them on camera. Moving, living proof that the Nazis' efforts to annihilate the Jews failed. Among the more than 50,000 testimonies of Jewish Holocaust survivors housed in the Shoah Foundation archive, Ken and Jimmy's joint appearance may be the only instance of a same-sex couple acknowledging their love for each other. Kenneth Roman died on August 9, 2016. He was 92 years old. We weren't able to find out what happened to Jimmy Draper. If anyone has any information about him, please write to us at hello@makinggayhistory.org. Coming up next, Holocaust survivors share memories of Freddie Hirsch, a German Jewish athlete, sports instructor, and guardian of children imprisoned in Auschwitz. This episode was produced by Inga Dataya, Nahani Rouse, and me, Eric Marcus. Our audio mixer was Ann Pope. Our studio engineer was Catherine Cook at CDM Sound Studios. Our theme music was composed by Fritz Myers. Thank you to our photo editor, Michael Green, our founding editor and producer, Sarah Birmingham, and our founding production partner, Jenna Weiss-Berman at Pineapple Street Studios. The interview featured in this episode is from the archive of the USC Shoah Foundation, the Institute for Visual History and Education. To learn more about the people and stories featured in our episodes, please visit makinggayhistory.org, where you'll find links to additional information and archival photos, as well as full transcripts. This special series on the experiences of LGBTQ people during the rise of the Nazi regime, World War II, and the Holocaust is a production of Making Gay History in partnership with the Fortunoff Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies at Yale University. I'm Eric Marcus. Until next time.